Here's an interview from one of our past shows on Rock and Metal Revival. If you're interested in hearing full shows, go to our Facebook page and check out our list of affiliates for times and places where you can hear Rock and Metal Revival.
Okay, that was Big Boys Don't Cry from W.E.T. or W.E.T, however you want to go at it. This is their fourth release called Retransmission. And it comes out on January 22nd. And on the phone, I got none other than their singer and probably should be our co-host, Jeff-Scott-Soto. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing, man. In this day and age, you don't really answer how you're doing. You just basically remind everybody that you're doing.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm still here. Really.
Yeah, exactly. And, survival is certainly one of the key components of being a musician, whether you started in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and especially now in the 2020s. It certainly is a trying time for everyone, and it's all about survival right now.
Yeah, very true, very true. So this release, Retransmission, your fourth album with, do you want to call it W.E.T?
Let's call it W.E.T. It makes it easier. Okay. W.E.T. takes too long, and we got things to do.
Yeah. W.E.T. Yeah, that gets a little old. So, yeah, W.E.T. I mean, all right, give us a little background on the band. We've had you on before, but, there might be listeners who have no idea what this band is and who's in it. So,
well, I got a call from the CEO of Frontiers Records, who's been a dear friend since I've signed with him in the very early stages of when that label started, Serafino. He had the idea of putting me with two of his kind of star writers and acts on the label. At that time, nobody really knew of them, but he was very well aware of their talents and what they were turning out with their own bands, which was Eric Martinson from the band Eclipse and Robert Sell from the band Work of Art. And he thought, my God, imagine the powerhouse music that would come out with these three guys, putting Jeff's voice with those guys' writing talents and the level of what they could put out together. And that's we were kind of the antithesis of what's become a regular thing now over at Frontiers. We were one of the first, I'm not going to say super groups, but it was kind of like a collab group. By no means I would ever call us a super group because nobody was really known or nobody was really, those guys weren't known so much. I was the only kind of semi-marquee artist on the bill. But he wanted to see what we could come up with, and that's exactly what we did on the first album, the first W.E.T. album, the debut album. It's just self-titled. We named the band after the three bands that derive of this band. It's Work of Art, Eclipse, and Talisman. And we just we came up with an acronym that worked for us. It was the best name that any of us came up with. So it kind of fit, especially because even musically, the ideal of what we're doing is the culmination really of those three bands. You can hear elements of those three bands in everything that we do. So why not give credit to where those three sounds are coming from? And that's why we named the band W.E.T.
Oh, okay, cool. So I listened. I watched a couple videos. The couple videos you put out so far, and dude, Robert can really shred on that guitar too, left-handed too. Like, wow, man.
His band Work of Art, I'm telling you, is so good. It's so underrated, and I wish they had a little more oomph behind them. That I've got what I'm doing, and of course I'm not worried about the levels of what I'm doing and how I get them. And Eclipse has certainly blown up in their own respect, and I really wish Work of Art could get that same level of notoriety because that band is just so good. That singer, all across the board. So I'm really happy that Robert gets to shine now finally as a guitar player, because most people just see him as a keyboard player in all the videos, and since we don't tour live, they don't really get to appreciate what he can do on the guitar. But man, he's a badass.
Yeah, definitely. So you guys have never toured? W.E.T. has never been able to tour yet? Mine.
We haven't toured. We've done a collection of shows here and there. I think we've played probably about 5 or 6 shows since the band's inception, because it's not really a band. It's not a touring item. It's more of a studio thing, and because that's the main reason, is the fact that we're just so busy with our day job, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to try and find openings and windows for us to actually make a tour, because usually, especially me, I'm in so many different things. I have to look and book, when things were normal, I have to look and book in advance. I'm going to say somewhere from 6 months to the next year and a half. I have to look at pockets and windows for the day gigs, so to speak.
Yeah.
And the same goes for them. If I'm free, then they're not free. So we've never really looked at this or gone into it as a touring item.
Mm-hmm.
So the few shows that we've done, including the one that we were able to make a live DVD out of, they're exactly that. They're more of just like a vanity thing in terms of the live forum.
Okay. So, listening to this album, which tracks on here would you be stoked to be playing live?
Well, every album that we do, there's certain things that I'm not going to say we change about what we're doing,
mm-hmm.
but I think we expand upon what we're doing. And on this album, I mean, I really love a song like "Gotta Be About Love," our second single, because it just everything about it. As soon as the song starts, it literally the vocals come right in. It's not what your traditional song that's got an intro and it's got the full rounds of a band before the singing starts. It's literally like a few seconds, and I start singing, and I love that we're doing something like that, different from some of the other stuff that we've done. Same with How Far to Babylon. I love the vibe that was kind of the swing groove vibe that we normally don't have in this band. So these two songs, I think, reflect the growth of this band, because the other ones kind of show what's expected of the band.
Yeah. Well, you've been pretty prolific putting out material, albums and music and solo stuff with band stuff and everything. Now, when you write with someone, do you prefer to write your own lyrics, or do you care?
At this point, I really don't care so much, because one can only write about so many subjects. And I don't mean that as I've run the wells run dry. I like being able to bring somebody else's story forth, and you basically you're doing that anyways. When you're starting as a musician, as a young musician, you're doing covers, you're doing other people's songs anyway, and so you're basically parlaying somebody else's thoughts, feelings, or emotions. And it goes the same with what I'm doing now. If you fast forward to 36 years, 37 years, I'm doing this now. I like to write and sing about my own experiences or somebody else's within my words and context, but it's also nice to also bring forth somebody else's, and I don't have any problem whatsoever in that.
Oh, okay, cool. So now I saw on Twitter a while ago that you right after you watched the Bee Gees documentary, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? I had just watched it. I had just watched it too, man. And being a metalhead and everything, I couldn't believe how I was feeling. It was like, wow, man, these guys really went through a lot. And, wow, the Disco Sucks thing really put them in a really bad spot, and I really felt bad about that. And, man, how did you feel after seeing that? Were you were a kind of a... I was okay with the Bee Gees. I liked jive talking and stuff like that. And then when the Saturday Night Fever, I liked that riff, that guitar riff in that song is really cool. But, I wasn't a huge fan, but now after seeing that, I've got so much respect for what they've done, and just baffling how much they contributed, You know
what? Music is so subjective, and it really is a sign of the times, the acceptance of music. I mean, I remember there were so many divisions, and this is one of the, I think the invention of the iPod really changed the platform of being able to tell people or being able to remind people that you can be open-minded and you can have an open canvas of influence when it comes to music. When we were younger, we would be blasted if I listened to only R&B, Motown, soul music, and then all of a sudden I'm listening to Kiss and Ted Nugent and Cheap Trick. My friends on that level would go, how can you listen to that garbage? It's all noise, it's all trash. And it came around the other way as well. If I'm listening to only the heavier bands or the rock bands, and all of a sudden some Air Supply or some ABBA or Barry Manilow pops in, or Little River Band or Bee Gees, then these were all things within the context of my life. When I'm dropping names of these bands, this is where I grew up. I grew up with loving and accepting, and I generated music and processed it as a whole. I didn't look at it as categories and genres. I only like this because it's that.
Yeah.
I will only listen to this because it's this.
Yeah.
You couldn't walk around back in those days and say you listened to the Bee Gees as well as loved Van Halen. It just didn't work.
Yeah.
And then even with the invention of the CD, you had first your CD wallet where you can only, if you're going on tour or you're going away, you can only bring maybe 12, maybe the 24 or even the 64 magazine or CDs. You were so limited in what you could bring. So you're just going to bring basically the things that if somebody's rifling through your collection, they're going to actually go, you listen to this?
Yeah.
You're such a pansy, you listen to that. So
Kenny G?
Limited.
What you doing with Kenny G?
Exactly. So the iPod came around, and all of a sudden you could load thousands of songs in there, and nobody's going to be rifling through your playlist, or you just all your music is in this tiny little device. Then all of a sudden you realize you're not alone. Everybody's got this crazy roulette wheel of music in their lives, and so I think a lot has changed and evolved. That just as you just said. You weren't really a fan of the disco era, this, that, and the other, but now you have an absolute respect for what they did and how they did it, especially because they were blasted for doing what they did at some point.
Yeah.
I was never one of those that passed judgment. I loved what I loved, and of course I had to kind of hide it. I was kind of in the musical closet, so to speak. And now you don't have to be. Now I can proudly say I love the Bee Gees, I love Kool and the Gang, I love Earth, Wind and Fire as much as I can say I love Iron Maiden and Judas Priest. Nice.
So the real question, were you ever in a disco band?
Yes, I was, but for 5 years, but it was the post-disco era.
Okay.
I wasn't when it was in full swing. I was in a band called Boogie Nights for about 5 years.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Where we dressed in polyester and afros, and we did the entire 70s kind of nostalgic novelty thing in full comedy form. If you can imagine Steel Panther in the form of a disco band, that's what we were, because that's where Steel Panther came from.
Nice.
Steel Panther came from our organization as an 80s hair metal tribute to that time frame, and then they eventually evolved into doing their own music.
That's cool. That's a cool story.
Crazy.
Nice. Now, my partner couldn't be here, but he had a question.
Okay.
With all the great guitarists you've played with, is there one that you've enjoyed the most playing with, or is that too big of a category?
Yeah, I think because I'm going to go in terms of personality. I mean, I work with some greats, and I wouldn't necessarily choose this person only primarily for their playing. I go the overall on how they are, who they are, how they are to work with, and that would be Bumblefoot. It's he's the quintessential guitar player, musician, but he's also the quintessential human being. So if I'm going to go in terms of personality and talent, it's got to be Bumblefoot.
Yeah, he's definitely a nice guy. We've had him on the show for one of your last releases with Sons of Apollo.
Yeah. But so he's beyond just a nice guy. He's a genuine good person. He's a good egg, as they say. You know, everything about him is just as a human being, it's the kind of person you want. You wish you surrounded yourself more of. You know, Bumblefoot. I can't say enough nice things about him.
Nice.
And of course, my buddy Jason Bieler.
Oh yeah, he's good too. So let's see. Sons of Apollo are both read in my top 10 albums of 2020. And so, is there anything new going on with Sons of Apollo? Any plans for any writing sessions or anything going forward?
I wish there were, but on the other hand, I think the ideal behind us not doing anything just yet is we have some unfinished business with that album. We've already rebooked that tour 3 or 4 times, and it's unfortunate that it sounds like it's looking like we may have to do it again. We were hoping that we were looking enough into the future that we would be able to go back out there in April and May, as we were penned to do. But it's looking, even as of today, that's probably not going to happen as well. As far as we're concerned, as you said, we made a great record. We didn't get to support it the way we wanted to. And by recording, I think they're always writing. There's always stuff going on with the guys who actually create the